Right, in this video, we're gonna run a WordPress using Docker and a virtual machine running on the ThreeFold network. This video is a sequel to the last video I put out where I am creating that virtual machine. You'll have to watch that first if you haven't. We're pretty much gonna hop right into this without a lot of intro. Um, so if you remember how the last video ended, we had gotten our IP address from our public IP4 address from the ThreeFold network. And in order to host a website on that, one of the first things you have to do, kind of like the pre-work on doing that, is setting up some kind of like back-end DNS stuff. I use Cloudflare for everything, um, and most people do. So I just changed my name servers over to Cloudflare so I can edit my DNS settings through Cloudflare. Um, just once you do that, there's a lot of other references for that. There is one setting in order to, well, use um, WordPress efficiently using Cloudflare, and that is on our initial setup settings is to always use HTTPS, or else you will throw errors later in our setup. Cloudflare is a great company, pretty much industry standard. I also recommend their ticker, which is NET. This is financial advice. So once you set um, your website that you're going to use for your WordPress up on Cloudflare, you need to link that website to your IP address. So here we are in the DNS settings, and we're going to get rid of our parking page. We're using Ravines ENG as our website today. That I was going to start engineering consulting, but decided I didn't feel like doing work. So we'll save that. And this is our old, this is the IP address that came with the website. We're not going to want to use that. We're going to want to use our IP address we made um, for ThreeFold. And I got signed out here. So today we're going to be using this guy right here. Yeah, so just edit that, change the IP. Cool. So now our backend stuff is done. To quickly summarize, um, off video, I changed our DNS servers over to Cloudflare's DNS servers to do these edits. Cloudflare will walk you through that, so I don't need to. I made it so that it does HTTPS rewrites for all requests to your website, and I changed the DNS record for your website over to our new IP for hosting. So now we're actually going to get to the meat and potatoes and actually do the setup. Heading over to my Linux screen over here. Let me get out of that. And we're going to SSH over into our IP. All this setup was done in the previous video. And we're just going to do apt update first. The very first thing you should do on any fresh virtual machine install. There we go. Now we're going to install a couple packages. We're going to do apt install docker.io. We'll do a Y tag so we don't have to enter anything else. And we'll do docker dash compose. So while this is loading, the reason we're doing this all through Docker is this is basically the modern way to do things. There's a lot of ways to host a website, but using Docker is sort of the most modern way. A lot of people try to use Caprover as well, which actually uses Docker behind the scenes, but I think it's actually easier just to actually do the command line interface. All right, we're going to change directory over into home. I don't need the dot. And we are going to make a directory called Docker and change directory into Docker. And we're going to make 3 directories. We're going to make Nginx Proxy Manager, make a directory for Portainer, and we're going to make a directory for WordPress, just going to abbreviate it, and let's change directory into Nginx Proxy Manager. Awesome, we're in there, and we're going to do nano, docker compose.yml, and I have all these Docker Compose scripts already kind of made up. Finding a good one can sometimes be a little bit of a pain. So I've done that for you here. We'll copy that over into Nano. Great. Control X, Y, enter, and docker-compose up flag D. And that will download, extract, and install relatively quickly. We're actually going to be using Nginx to be our Ssl Search manager, as well as exposing that WordPress Docker image out to the internet. Now with that installed, we're going to go back one directory and change directory into Portainer, which is technically optional, but it is helpful. It is a Docker kind of graphic user interface for maintaining Docker images. So we're going to do the same thing we did earlier, nano docker compose, and let's grab our stack. Things are a little laggy when you have a remote desktop, so it's a little annoying. Okay, paste that in there. That's all good. Control X, Y, enter. This one should install faster. Okay, we'll go back one directory and change directory into WordPress. All this stuff will eventually be posted onto my blog. Who knows when? And paste that in. Now, there's a few changes I actually made to this one compared to what you'll find online. Is I added the rest of our directory over before DB data. You'll need to do that so that it knows where to store your persistent data. You should change your passwords here and reflect those password changes down here. I also changed port 80 to 8086 to avoid a conflict. Other than that, it's all the same. Control X, Y, and let's launch that Docker. Sorry for the low energy today. It's about 5 o'clock on a Saturday. Sunburnt and tired. Don't exactly feel peppy. But hey, this is a boring instructional video, not some hype shill crypto video where you drink a whole bunch of caffeine beforehand and scream into the mic. Fairly big package. It'll take a minute to install. Cool, all installed. We're actually going to do a Docker restart for Portainer first before we start the rest of the setup. There we are. So let's go over to a browser. I'm going to get out of my remote desktop so it's a little more responsive. We're going to just use the IP address. Okay, if you see that, some things are working. So we're going to need to change our port first. First thing we're going to do is let's set up our Portainer first, port 9000. So add a colon 9000. Hey. All right, make a password for this. Don't lose this, and be careful if using a password manager, because this is all going to be on the same IP address and domain, and it can overwrite what you saved before, and you'll be in deep trouble trying to recover that password. So keep everything with the same password and username, or just be careful what you're doing, or you could really pay for that later. That's right, it really likes a whole bunch of numbers here. Awesome. Create user. We'll hit get started here. Awesome. Let's go to for containers. So here you actually see what we installed. Here's our portainer. Here's our Nginx proxy manager. Here's our WordPress database, or that's the WordPress database and our actual WordPress here. All right, let's set up the Nginx proxy manager now. That's going to be port 81. We also tell here, actually, if you scroll over to the right, we're going to use 81. So I'm going to keep that open. Yeah, that's right. It's actually going to be admin. There it is. And password is going to be change me. Excellent. Head over to host, proxy host, add proxy host, and domain name. If you're doing multiple Docker applications, you want to expose them on different subdomains, you can do that here. Since this is just WordPress, our domain name is just going to be ravinseng.com. Enter. And here's the interesting part. We're going to go over here and we're going to click on our WordPress. I'm going to go down to the bottom. All the way down to the bottom, we're going to copy that gateway IP address. I'm going to paste that there. And our port for this is going to be 8086. I did 8086. We're going to click block common exploits and head over to the SSL tab. Let's go ahead and make sure the darn thing works first. Click here. Fingers crossed. Taking a while. Excellent. We have it. Let's just go ahead and test the install. We'll call this my failed engineering company. Well, it's not really failed if you never like started it, right? Password strength is unknown. Interesting. Confirming the use of my weak password. Awesome, that is it. Now, let's actually head over to the actual site. They have a little default stuff here. You can see we have an unsecured connection. That's what that little exclamation point means. Let's add an SSL cert to this. Edit SSL. Request a new one. With Cloudflare, normally clicking force SSL breaks things most of the time. Leave that unchecked. I think you should check that one. Leave that email there. We'll save this. Takes a minute to create a new SSL. Okay. Now the caching in here might make things weird. So I'm actually going to head over to a new browser because it's kind of hanging on to old settings. Cool. And our connection is secure. Over in Firefox, it was hanging on to the old config because of the caching settings. But you see, we are good now. We could even try it over in Chrome just to get a couple data points. Awesome, we're secure here too. That's all there is to making a WordPress. I find all the little shortcuts like Haprover just create a headache. They're not really any more intuitive, and you're going to be able to use less resources on your install by doing it this way, and you can save money. And I just don't see the point of using Caprover. It seems like it's broken half the time anyways. So that's all there is to this video. WordPress makes up 40% of the internet, so this video should definitely help someone. That's all there is for today. Thanks.